Welcome back to Junction 119. This is Casen.
This is Kellan. And what bit are you talking about, my friend?
Well, I mean, we can get into that. I mean, I had a bit regarding the National Football League that I'll address in a minute, but
So,
I at least wanted to open the show talking about Banner Night
yeah,
that we had
Cason's
last
got
night.
Cason's rocking his Vegas Golden Knight
Uh,
Vegas Golden
uh,
Knights hat. Uh, Before we get too into the show, we are going to go football and a lot of pop culture today because we've been missing out. You're going to hear Casey and I's thoughts on Ahsoka, the ending of season 1, beginning of Loki, and we're going to spend probably the majority of the show time on that. But we are going to give you a first half of our thoughts on sports of the week and kind of the manner we've been doing, football centric, and then we're going to give you of the weeks. I'll go ahead and toss out an early joke of the week to start. Over the top banner celebrations of the week goes to your Vegas Golden Knights, Kason. That's what I have to say to you there.
I more like the greatest Banner Night of the week ever.
Ever, he says. No, no, but okay. It was flashy and over the top, just like the city, but that's okay. That's
I, I
fine.
mean, so I mean, for anybody who didn't see it, the Golden Knights came out on the ice for their championship banner unveiling, and Captain Mark Stone had the cup with him. He placed it on a table next to a ginormous slot machine, and then he pulled the lever, and then it landed on 3 Stanley Cups, jackpot, and then the banner came out of the slot machine and rose up to the rafters. It was amazing, terrific, everything I could have possibly hoped for and more.
That's good. It was extremely good, and being obviously the show being what it is, we did a whole episode when they won the Stanley Cup. So hockey is back. We do not have hockey like specifically on the agenda. We are recording this on a Wednesday, literally after the puck drop. So we are gonna address it here in the coming weeks. But I had a feeling you were gonna open the show. We were gonna talk about that.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
we do have the NFL on the agenda. Like I said, we are going to kind of go our regular stuff. I'll let you kind of start the NFL discussion because there are a couple things we should probably go ahead and address in yet just another week in the league.
Yeah. I mean, it, we had another London game, which was real interesting. I mean, I Jags beat the Bills in London. I mean, who could have possibly foreseen that the team that had to fly to London on Friday got beat by the team that was there for a week and a half?
It it it,
I
it was
mean,
it was brought to my attention that this show has not been very kind to the Bills this season, and we're not going to start anytime soon.
no, I mean,
That said,
I will at least defend the Bills and say that they kind of they look sleepy, like jet lagged, as every team does in London. With it just happens that they unfortunately were playing the Jags, who had been there for a week and a half already.
yeah, and they still came back in the game, and if that goes another maybe 10 minutes, maybe another quarter, Bills probably still win. So
Yeah,
yeah,
exactly. So
they
it's just, to me,
they sleepwalked and still almost won. So
yeah, exactly. And so I mean, I think if that is played in America at a normal time, they win that game easily. So
yeah, so it's
it's
kind of
it's
nothing.
it's it's a yeah. I mean, you can't look into it too hard, but
The one thing
it
I
is
did
what it
want to
is.
say about this past week is that there are a couple other games I wanted to point out, mainly performances that I thought were really solid because we're at that point in the season now where we're really starting, we're a good month in. We're into, this will be week 6 coming up. Week 5 to 6, 7, we're starting to hit that period of time where the separation is starting to happen among the teams that truly are contenders. And I think in
Mhm.
the NFC, it's really starting to show itself. I think there is a clear cut best 3 in the NFC. I think it's the 49ers, the Eagles, and the Detroit Lions. Shout out James, who was on last week. He, kind of was providing the Lions fans perspective of something that is just in his life they've never really experienced. And I think this past week, especially, they really, really showed out as kind of really James said that they would. just pretty much destroying the Lions, or the Lions destroyed the Panthers as a good team in the NFC supposed to do to a bad team in the NFC, to the point where game was essentially over by the third, and the final score was 42-24. But I mean, the Lions, I want to say the Lions were up 28-10 at halftime. I mean, it wasn't a game.
Yeah.
No, go ahead. You can respond to everything.
Well, yeah, no, I mean, absolutely. I mean, my only question here is that I think the Lions have a chance to have a really, really good record. It's just the issue is that I think their schedule is looking to be incredibly soft without a whole lot of like real tests. And so I mean, look, don't discount it. You make the playoffs, that's a win right there. It's just they might run into the problem the Vikings had last year, where they sort of had a really soft schedule, and then they make it to the playoffs and they get absolutely annihilated by the Eagles.
Well,
so it's just
I could see something like that, but if anything, I think this is a sign of things to come. I think for the NFC North, this is a new NFC North with the Lions at the clear top of the food chain. None of the rest of those franchises, I think, are the Vikings are trending in the wrong direction.
Well,
Packers and Bears hang on, the Packers and Bears are not good. And if the Lions can sustain this and win that division this year, this could be the norm for quite a while, honestly.
Yeah. I mean, absolutely. I mean, I think what I'm trying to think of what I was saying. Yeah. So I think what I found out, or sort of just realized, is that it definitely seems like it's a pattern, especially with like the last several years, where it's like whoever just runs away with it in the NFC North is just a very fraudulent, like 10+ win team. Like we've seen it the last 4 years. Like the Packers won 13 games and then got annihilated in the playoffs. The Vikings won 13 games. Like we've seen it time and time again.
Packers don't really get annihilated in the playoffs.
They got killed by the Niners, didn't they?
A couple years ago. I mean, they lose to the Niners typically at home in games where they just don't look good. I mean, I see what you're getting at. You're implying the same thing's going to happen to the Lions this year.
I definitely hope it doesn't, but that seems to be the trend. Yeah. And I would be concerned for them not being super tested.
Yeah. And I think that, and no one would have more caution than Lions fans. But what I'm pointing out is that they have the new look NFC North is something that Detroit fans should be happy about. Is primarily
absolutely. I mean, it's the Lions division for the time being.
That said, I wouldn't take Detroit in a game with the Eagles or especially San Francisco right now. San Francisco absolutely annihilates, since that seems to be the word of the week, the Cowboys in a performance that is quite hilarious, mainly because it's the Cowboys. It's just like, of course they look absolutely terrible, and just their whole fan base blows up the internet with various videos, getting rid of their Dak stuff and all this stuff, like taking down photos and barbershops and everything. And it's like,
we got the Skip jersey in the trash can video.
Yep.
As we always do.
And I look forward to it every time the Cowboys lose. Stephen A. Smith just like laughing into a camera. It's just very, very funny. That said, I don't have anything against the Cowboys or their fans. It's just, hey, guess what? Yes, that's just the difference between the Cowboys and the 49ers right now. Also, I think Brock Purdy is him. I think Brock Purdy is good.
Yeah.
And I have to, he's holding it down for my fantasy team right now. So I have to give him props, especially since I had Aaron Rodgers. So we're kind of trying to turn things around.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's definitely, I think, a difficult thing for people to, I mean, especially me, to really like comprehend, in the fact of like he didn't really get talked about much at Iowa State. And I mean, he looked decent. It's just that like in the Big 12, it's hard to know. And typically there's a trend, where it's like Big 12 quarterbacks don't succeed very often because they are playing typically worse defenses than some other quarterbacks. But
and it's interesting you say that, because obviously Patrick Mahomes came from Texas Tech. No one thought he was going to be as good as he is. But then again, can't that be said for every, like, maybe not every NFL great of all time, but Brady, no one had any idea he was going to be that. Mahomes, no one had any idea he was going to be that. Josh Allen, no one thought he was that out of Wyoming. I mean, you know, some guys I think are just like built for the long term, you know, long term in the league. And honestly, if there was ever an exact science of figuring out who's the perfect franchise quarterback and what those assets are, that person would be considered a genius, right? And probably a millionaire. They would have found, you know, if you can handpick all of them. For a lot of intangible things, it is that. But I also think we are starting to see proof of so much of it is the situation you land in, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Like in my life and in your life, Kasen, I honestly think that might be a more determining factor than almost anything else. Like so
Well,
many, just so many
I mean,
intangibles.
the perfect example of that is, I mean, take a look at Baker Mayfield. I mean, he played for the Browns and then the Panthers, two of the most dysfunctional teams of the last, you know, couple years, and he looked like garbage. And then he goes to McVay in LA and looks better. Then he's in Tampa Bay right now with a bunch of Super Bowl champions.
I mean, not to get too
he
into
looks
the weeds,
good.
not to get too into the weeds, but he is actually the poster child for a whole argument that there was a TikToker that made a point that this person was not a Steelers fan, and they were pointing out how mostly Kenny Pickett's looked pretty mid, but he looks serviceable compared to other quarterbacks in the league, right? And we know how bad his offensive coordinator is, right? So Kenny's able to make flashes of brilliance here and there. If you took someone with actual maybe more better mechanical skill and dropped them into the Steelers organization, like a Justin Fields, he would probably look like a top 15 quarterback in the league, top 10 quarterback in the league right now. It was just the point they were making, but you dropped Baker into a better situation, and he's looking tremendously better. And so, and also, you take a Russell Wilson out of his situation in Seattle, he looks like he's playing his way right out of the Hall of Fame. He looks so bad. And so I don't know. I think here, especially in the last like 5 to 10 years, we've really started to see that be like undeniably true, which makes me feel bad for anyone who's a fan of an organization that can't quite like get it together. At least I know so far with the Steelers, as a fan, we'll always be serviceably decent. You know what I mean? Whereas, you know, but that doesn't mean you couldn't get a brilliant offensive mind into the building at one of these places, and the right quarterback comes along, and Mahomes, you know. So I don't know. I know some Chiefs fans in my more recent circle who literally said in my company, we never foresaw anything like this as fans, and no one ever does. You know what I mean? Patriots fans didn't with Brady. Chiefs fans don't now, and the next great dynasty won't foresee it either. It's just the way things fall. But not to go on a tangent, but I just thought I'm really happy you brought up Baker, because that, like, this year is really starting to show me system is everything.
No, yeah, absolutely. I mean, and I think that, like, just the last point I'll make on this is just that I think that, like, definitely the cultural fit as far as the guy and his mentality being congruent with the rest of the organization and stuff is, I think, definitely the biggest. Because if we go back to Brock Purdy, for instance, like, Brock Purdy is definitely, you know, being such a young kid that he just does whatever Kyle asks him to do, and he does what he asks him, and really, you know, nothing else, and that's exactly what they need. And I think that was sort of the difference where he has a little bit more talent than Jimmy did to be able to execute what Kyle needs better, and he's not going to be taking any stupid risks because he doesn't have that, like, mentality that he's entitled to it. Like, it's almost like the best thing about having a 7th round quarterback is that he's not like he's totally aware that he's, you know, not a first rounder. and I mean, and he's making $800,000 living in an apartment with a roommate. Like,
and maybe there's something to be said for the guy who comes in and knows they have to work for it. You know what I mean? Do you want a guy more like how many great first round quarterbacks have worked out? Like, you know, in recent years in the NFL, there's usually only 1 to 2 that really become main staples. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And because you really have to judge a draft by like 3 or 4 years out, which we don't really do. enough of. Even around draft time, we don't really do it because we're trying to look for immediate talent. But Purdy probably looks at it and is like, man, I fell into a certain situation, but there's no way he would have said by this point in his career that he was going to be the starter and they would have moved on from Trey Lance. Like, you look at the Niners right now, they hit on every position except quarterback, and it looks like QB, they're going to be okay. You know
yeah, I mean? Exactly. Like
they hit on every
managed
single
to,
one.
Yeah. Of which, by the way, I will also contend that, like, on the surface, Brock Purdy probably shouldn't have even made it to the 7th round to begin with. I mean, he definitely, I think, was he was definitely probably a higher pick than
Right.
he was, but anyway.
But right. And again, it's like Brady fell to the 6th round. You know, it's like you just the system and everything, and now his former coach and the GM, they don't look very good at all. The Patriots people have been tapping on the dancing on the graves of the Patriots.
I think Scott, I think Bowling Green football head coach Scott Loeffler, who was Tom Brady's quarterback coach at Michigan, he said that they were all expecting him to go in the 3rd, but he had a terrible combine and that made him fall that far. So he was projected to be like a 3rd going in, and then he just like he can't run, so he fell way down the draft boards.
Anyway, we digress. Things to look at really big time in the NFL, especially nowadays with, you know, how much system guy. Is he a system guy? I'm starting to think they're all system guys, literally.
Speaking of a great transition, because speaking of system guy, and you brought it up, the New England Patriots.
Yeah, New England Patriots, man. This is one thing I definitely wanted to address this week's show in the NFL, simply because all the years where just no one could beat them, and like we finally have lived to a point where the Patriots are bad, and it's actually, I think, just as much because of Belichick, as much as their success.
I think we're just eating all of this up, like enjoying the losing, and I mean, you lose by 35, and then you lose by 34 at home and get shut out. Like it's bad.
It's beautiful to see if you're not a fan of the Patriots. Now, in all seriousness, any Patriots fans who might tune into our show, look, you had all this success, but a lot of them have already taken to social media and been like, if this is like exacting revenge from the football gods, so to speak, like if this is our payment, it's like it's almost Celtics season. They don't care anymore. Right. Well, right, and also it's also just the sign of the times, right? I mean, you got the Celtics who went out to the Heat the way they did last year. We have a baseball postseason going on right now without the Yankees or the Red Sox, which is just fantastic for all us little guys. And I don't know, just in the Boston and the Boston Bruins had the greatest season ever last year, and they lost in the first round hilariously. So I don't know, man. It's just, I think this also just goes to show, though, if you're a sports fan, 90% of the time your teams are going to disappoint you. You know what I mean? If you heck, probably higher than that, 99% if they do anything but win a championship of some kind. There's a difference between professional sports and college sports, but you understand what I mean, right? It's just kind of like the ebbs and flows and the ups and downs. And if you just have any period of time of success, you're happy, or you just get close to even one championship. But when you have a dynasty like them, everyone's going to be happy when you're finally bad again. That's what's happening right now. So go ahead. Anything else in the league?
Yeah, I mean, I was just going to point out a couple things. I mean, you said most of it about the Patriots, but yeah, I mean, I think that'll be, just keep an eye on that. I mentioned it to Kellen before we recorded that I'm going to sprinkle in my joke of the weeks here while we talk about the games, and then we'll sort of have a real segment of the week where we're talking about the actual, sort of to keep the confusion away, and to make it make more sense. So since we were talking about the Patriots, my joke of the week here is bum of the week, and that goes to Robert Kraft for allowing this senile old man Belichick to destroy his franchise.
Jeez. That's I would say again the pile-on. The pile-ons are undeniable.
I saw I saw a TikTok where somebody was gonna say that, oh, the Patriots are gonna be so bad they get the #1 pick and they're gonna draft a long snapper from Navy.
That would be funny. I have started to see though people say, I mean, the Patriots at least right now are technically in the running for the first overall pick, but
Yeah, I think
we're
they're
going, it's
5 or
gonna be
6 right now.
it's
Yeah,
gonna be the Panthers again. The way things are probably going, but I digress.
yeah, yeah.
You have another of the week for the NFL?
Yeah, I do actually.
Let's go. Yeah.
I I have a garage sale of the week, and that goes to the Denver Broncos because it has been reported that the entire universe is on fire in Denver, and they are putting pretty much anybody that people want is available. If you want Jerry Jeudy, Cortland Sutton, like, give them a call.
Russell
Everybody's
Wilson.
available.
Russell Wilson.
I mean, I don't think he even can be traded. I mean, his contract
No.
is untradeable at this point.
No.
But yeah, I mean, if they are prepared to tear down everything, because yeah, I mean, they're not going to be good anytime soon, and
It's almost,
yeah,
they're
I mean,
definitely in the conversation of like, whose situation would you want, right? Do you want Chicago's? Do you want Denver's? Do you want New England's? Do you
it's
want
so bad.
Carolina's? Like, those are like the big four in terms of
I would say
five.
the worst situation is Denver, because
agree.
I don't know what you do, because at least Carolina, New England, and Chicago have like paths forward. Like, you just keep drafting younger talent and eventually it'll stockpile. But it's like because they all don't, none of them have like huge expensive quarterbacks. Denver has the albatross of Russ. And it's just like, I mean, it's like, what are you going to do with that? Like, he's going to be sitting on your books for who knows how long. So it's like, even if they do somehow luck into getting Caleb Williams or Drake May or whatever, like, they're going to have to pay Russ $45 million.
Right. And Denver was just purchased by the richest owners in the league, right? Like that Walton Group.
Mm.
So maybe that's something that they would be willing to buy their way out of at some point if it ever got bad enough. But you're right. The worst situation to be in, especially like in sports, no matter what, is when you've spent a lot of money like for a core that you thought was going to be good, and now you still owe that money and you're not good at all, and you have no real direction first. Like, there's no real fixing the situation. That's what I think maybe they thought Peyton was going to do this year, Sean Payton. And it's just like, no, it's looking like it's rotten to the core over there. I like the New York Mets come to mind. We were talking about them a week ago.
By the way, I don't know if this is true or not, but I saw a report that they're paying him $18 million a season.
Who? Sean Payton?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, again,
that is insane if that's true.
The one thing we didn't say last week, and I don't hear enough people talking about, and maybe it's just because I haven't been paying attention. Don't you recall that the reason Sean Payton left New Orleans is because he didn't want to be on the books for what was going to be a rough rebuild? You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's also true.
With no money in the cap. And I don't think he thought that was what he was getting going to Denver. I really don't think that's what he realized this really is now becoming. And I think he is very, very furious about that reality. I think like he's caught in one anyway.
That's what I don't understand, because everyone else knew that. Like, I don't understand how you can just walk in here and just assume that it was all Hackett being terrible at his job. I can fix Russ in a week.
See, I sort of disagree with you. I don't think enough people in the building really thought that was the case, because they didn't.
No, I'm saying I knew that. I think you probably knew that. Like, I don't understand
the building. The building, I don't think necessarily knew that. I just don't like. I don't think they realized how much of a mess they have on their hands right now. And it's like, oh boy, what do you do?
I also think that they probably thought the defense was going to be better than it is, because like the defense was still pretty good last year with the offense being bad, and then they have just fully taken steps back, and
with as bad
on either side.
With as bad as you were last year, and you share the division with the Chargers and the Chiefs, like the new Patriots, I don't know. I think you are realistic about saying, hey, look, we might be the door, like the doormat of this division for a while. Why don't we just rip it down the best we can? And I just do not believe that that is something that Sean Payton thought he was walking into. But we've probably spent more time on that than we really should have.
Yeah.
You can close that conversation with anything you might want to say in response to it, but we should probably move on to
there
college.
was one more thing that I at least wanted to bring up, because there's this
For sure. Go ahead.
This thing that I wanted to at least address. You mentioned that the worst thing in sports is to be a team with an albatross of a contract that for somebody that isn't working out. That can also be applicable to the Cleveland Browns with a disgustingly terrible contract for a terrible human being that plays terrible and doesn't want to play football. And so for that reason, I find it very difficult to even like care about the team right now, because it's just like every day it's news stories about like, oh, why did he not play? Like, because he like apparently was medically cleared and just said, no, I'm good, I don't want to play last week. And so now we're gonna have a practice squad quarterback starting for us on Sunday. So
you're speaking from experience there. That's why, honestly, since we've been doing our show in this football season, I've had more fun talking with you about every other team than the ones we root for.
Yeah, absolutely.
There are things that are like, I'd rather talk about everything else. If listeners want to know my opinion on the Steelers, I will give it to them. And some of them I give it to them every day. Same thing with you with the Browns. I mean, no doubt. But it's been hard for me to be a fan this year because, for the reasons I have, and now for the reasons you have.
And so I will take it upon myself to spin a wheel right now and choose a team at random that I will ride or die for this season.
Oh, no,
that is not the Cleveland Browns.
Don't do that to yourself. Don't do that.
We will see here.
Oh, this could be a disaster. Just for the listeners out there, this could be an even worse disaster.
And the phone says it is the Seattle Seahawks.
Okay.
So I am a fan. This could have gone really bad. I will be a fan of the Seattle Seahawks for the remainder of the season. Let's go. Geno QB1.
That right there, I was so badly just wishing, can it please be the Broncos? Can it please be a team that we've spent the better part of the last I was waiting for it to be the Broncos, the Bills, or like some team we've talked with at length that there's issues with.
It could have been like the Commanders.
Yeah, the Commander. Like, I'm like, please let it be just some random team, and that's what it was. Thank you, football gods. We appreciate.
I was so that could have gone real bad.
That was good. I was gonna fall out of my seat right here on this podcast if it was one of those teams. The team that he said, is it the team that Casen declared their window closed, or is it the team that we just spent the last 5 minutes talking about how bad it all is? Anyway. Or one of the other.
I would have flipped it up. Yeah, let's go, Russ.
or it would have been the Pittsburgh Steelers, or like the. Or someone in the
I would have just respawned. I would have been like, no.
Okay. Anyway, that's a Junction 119 first. My man really just spun a wheel because he's just that disgusted with his own team. But if anyone deserves to be disgusted with his own team, it's the Browns fan in the room, right? All right, that is more NFL than I thought we were going to go with. Let's go to college, where we're not going to, like I said, I'm not going to go as deep into this as I want, but it blends into one of my of the weeks, or just the thing we have to talk about. Any games in particular that stood out? I think we should talk about the big one, the Red River, because we did talk about it. I did actually get a chance to watch most of this game, because I was wrong. I really thought Texas was going to pull this one out, but Oklahoma defeated.
I did too. And yeah. I mean, I will issue my apology of the week to Brent Venables. I said some pretty harsh things following the terrible season last year that I think was probably an outcome of Lincoln Riley leaving and a lot of transfers and things.
Yeah.
And hat off to Brent Venables for being able to fix whatever went wrong last year. Because they're now sitting here 6-0. I mean, they're going to be a top 10 team, and they control their own destiny as far as that goes. Because I mean, if they continue on and stay undefeated, I mean, I mean, I don't know how they can't be a playoff team.
Well, the one really interesting thing that was pointed out to me by some fans, in the area of the country I live in, is that these two teams could meet again.
I would say they probably will.
They probably will meet again, and that, like, so in a way, there's motivation on both sides, right? Like Oklahoma's like, okay, if we got to dispatch Texas again, we beat them the first time. Texas is like, look, we have a chance to beat Oklahoma to get them back. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Could make for another really like instant classic, especially in that big. Anytime there's a rematch, which I think we might start seeing more of, especially next year with the playoff and everything coming in. It's fascinating.
I mean, I think definitely. I mean, if Texas goes on and beats Oklahoma in the rematch for the Big 12 championship, I mean, I would say it's probably likely then they both don't make they both miss the playoff. But
right, but
either way,
only losses to each other. Is there a scenario where they both could make it? Simply because of the Big 12, probably not. But but that's exactly what the 12-team playoff is aiming to get rid of, right? The fact that okay, both of their seasons can just continue. Either way, hats off to Oklahoma. Looks like this is a solid semblance of a defense too. Hence one of the reasons why they're undefeated. And we always said, like, if a Big 12 team could ever learn how to play actually good defense, they would win a national championship, right?
So. Yeah, no, exactly. I mean, and that was the whole reason Brent Venables, was hired. I mean, he's an Oklahoma guy, but like his record defenses at Clemson. I mean, if he could bring that to Oklahoma, they would just lock down the entire conference, and it seems to be working so far. I mean, they seemingly have been doing a decent job at that. But
I have listen, this is jumping ahead a little bit, but I have 3 contenders for my upset of the week. Okay. Two of them, okay, are Louisville over Notre Dame. I actually got to watch the end of that game, and that was a pretty impressive lockdown by the Louisville Cardinals to defeat Notre Dame, handing them their second loss of the year in a year where I think a lot of people picked Notre Dame to kind of run the table after that Ohio State game. Notre Dame tends not to do that, but I thought that was impressive. And the other one was Georgia Tech over Miami. I gotta say, for many reasons. I mean, added to the fact that our Bowling Green Falcons beat Georgia Tech last week, and they come back in and they have to play number 17 Miami. But the way Miami lost that game makes me think, should that have been an upset? Should it not have? But it was. And those are 2 of my contenders. Honorable mentions. I'll tell you what my actual one is when we get to that. But you can say whatever you want about either one of those games.
Yeah, I mean, my coach of the week goes to Mario Cristobal.
There it is. We don't have to walk the listeners through it. I mean, if you don't know what we're referring to, just look up Miami Hurricanes to Georgia Tech and the way they lost.
I mean, essentially, they just needed to do a kneel down to end the game, and they kept running it apparently to get the running back to or 100-yard game or something. But yeah, I mean, it terrible decision. The fan base is furious. It apparently the Hurricane athletic director was sitting in his press conference on Monday, which he doesn't normally do. And so, yeah, I mean, I think the game is definitely says more about Miami than Georgia Tech.
Yeah, I mean,
I think also, to be fair, it probably shouldn't have even been that close to where they could have won it.
Right.
In one score.
What I will say,
Miami. Yeah, I mean, Miami wants to be better than this, and they're still, barely beating bad teams and losing.
Right. And I think just to kind of put my, professional kind of spin on, not spin, but my take on this is that I think there's decisions that are made everywhere for a lot of different reasons, right? And that game kind of unfolded like if you're joking with your friends, like if you and I were joking off of the recording saying, oh, wouldn't it be funny if like they fumbled here and then it was recovered by the other team and then they actually went 75 yards in 2 plays and lost in that way. Like it was comic, like every cartoonish thing that could have happened to lose that game that 99 times out of 100 doesn't happen happened in 3 plays. You know what I mean? And that
it's like Madden. Like
yeah, it was like a video game, and it was like you're trying to make a decision to lose, right? And coaches don't coach to lose. You know what I'm saying? That doesn't happen, especially at the college level. That doesn't happen. It should never happen. But the thing I will say is the player reactions make me fear for like the rest of Miami's year, because when something like that happens, just having worked as I have in and out of college athletics, like young people trust you as administrators to make good decisions, right? And they're a lot of the time it can be more impressionable, and just when something unfolds, even if you didn't intend it to that poorly, you just kind of, I worry about what it does to you mentally. That's all I wanted to say.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's definitely a really good point to make and to bring up, in that I think that the reason I don't think technically this one outcome is going to cost Cristobal his job. I think the fallout might cost him his job, because like you said, I think it's very likely that he lost the locker room over the weekend. And if they continue to struggle because of that, and if people leave, I mean, if there's people hitting the portal in the offseason because they can't trust him anymore, then that's a bigger issue.
Right.
And
only time will tell. I mean, they just they got done with their non-conference, I believe. Everything left on their schedule is a ACC opponent. So I'll be honest, I really don't want to see it go completely off the rails after something like that, because I don't want to see anyone pay the price for something like that. But at the same time, you worry after something unfolds that just should not, like, it seemingly just shouldn't have happened. And
well, I think the bigger issue is that he's done that before.
Yeah, he's and people have pointed that out for sure.
Like there was a game at Oregon where the same thing happened against Stanford and they lost in overtime. So it's like you'd think that maybe he would learn from that, and it doesn't seem like he did.
Right. Well, and it makes you wonder why certain why certain coaches make certain decisions, right? I just think back to the genius take that you and friend of the show Matt had when you pointed out to me that the reason Pete Carroll doesn't run it on the 1 yard line with Marshawn Lynch is because that happened at USC and with Lendell White, and he did that and it didn't work. So it messes with you psychologically. It's like any of us in our lives, right? It's like, well, if I'm ever in this situation again, I will do something completely different. And it's
I mean,
you're overthinking it. It's an overthinker myself. You're overthinking it, but it's okay.
Well, and like with the Pete Carroll thing, like if he did run it with Marshawn and he got stuffed, we would have been saying, why didn't you pass it? Like,
right, exactly.
This was just a terrible idea. Like,
yeah, it was. But again, we're probably thinking, why do you run the ball there? But if he doesn't fumble it, this isn't even a story, right? We're probably not even talking about this game, because okay, Miami beats, like, that would have like, as I'm going through the scores like I do every week on the show, that wouldn't have even like registered, like, okay, close game, they beat Georgia Tech though, whatever. Like, it's not even a story. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Sometimes something just goes so egregiously a direction, good or bad, that it's like, okay, now it's a story. But I digress.
Well, like, that's the thing, is that like you have other coaches like Jimbo Fisher who have to be so happy that Mario Cristobal did that, because now the heat's off them.
Right.
Because, oh my goodness, like we're not gonna go into too depth, but
right. One more shout
Jimbo
out.
Fisher.
Oh, go ahead.
Well, Jimbo Fisher and Texas A&M lost a close game to Alabama, in which Jimbo did not coach very well and made some pretty terrible decisions, getting all in his own head against Nick Saban. But yeah, I mean, I like an idiot predicted Texas A&M to win the SEC West.
Yeah, you did do that. Yeah.
I still maintain that wasn't a terrible take at the time, but as soon as I saw them kind of come out, and they actually lost to Miami too. a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So they're not better than last year. They're equally as bad. And that's another thing where they're just waiting until they can afford to buy out Jimbo Fisher.
Maybe not. But I also want to shout out, so just because I gave them a shout out last week, Wyoming was able to upset Fresno State at number 24. So that actually hands Fresno big win. Fresno State, that's their first loss of the year. Wyoming was also undefeated. So actually, no, I take that back. Wyoming had one loss going into that game. So
their one loss was to Texas.
So. The loss was Texas. So still a really solid team, not a bad loss or result for really either team. Obviously you want to win, but and then the other thing was this kind of flew under the radar, but Washington State number 13 was knocked off by unranked UCLA. Again, the Pac-12 just kind of cannibalizing is a word, but like
they were.
Yeah, UCLA was unranked and they beat number 13 Washington State, after what we gave Washington State the praise. Again, just good conferences in-house. It's hard to winning week in, week out.
Yeah. I mean, it's what the Pac-12 is known for, is they just cannibalize themselves. And I think it's really unfortunate because like this is probably one of the best years for the Pac-12 and it's the last year. I mean, we have Oregon, Washington, USC, Colorado. Like we have so much, Oregon State, Washington State. There's so many teams to talk about in the Pac-12, and it's going to make it so depressing that this is it.
This is it.
Like,
yeah, I mean,
they're going out with a bang, but like it's such a fun conference, and it's going to be so unfortunate that these teams aren't going to be playing each other all the time anymore.
Yeah, and at least not all the time. Like I said, as I explained, I really think that you're going to see these teams have to fill out their non-conference schedules with each other. So I still think you will get and retain many of these matchups, not just here, but in all of sports for the sake of the season happening. You'll probably see it more in other sports, honestly. But yeah, it is sad, but I'm still enjoying this year, the last year of the Pac-12 while we have it. Do you want to get into serious of the weeks?
Yeah, well, I did have one more joke. I mean, I forgot to mention it.
You got one more joke? Go for it.
Not back of the week, Texas.
I don't know. I don't even know if that's fair. I gotta. That's funny. You're officially not back of the week. I that is funny. That's probably something that every Oklahoma fan is like, yeah. That's a good one.
Yeah,
that's a good joke. That's a good joke. Yeah, that's accurate.
Anyway, yeah, so we can go ahead and get into real ones here.
Right. And that doesn't mean that some of these might not be serious, but I will give I'll go ahead and give one that, just because it's not a football one and I do want to mention it. I have my trio of the week. Okay. Trio of the week. And that trio is Sidney Crosby, Evgeny Malkin, and Chris Letang. And I'm going to tell you why, of the Pittsburgh Penguins. This is a really weird stat, but they became the longest trio on a team continuously, as like in terms of number of years in the history of American professional sports, which again is a really weird stat to me, because I guess what constitutes as a trio, like I guess these three players, yes, have been on the Pens for like whatever it is, 19 years now, 18 years. They surpassed the Yankee trio to do it, I guess, for some reason that they pointed out, of Derek Jeter, Mariano Rivera, and Pettit, if I'm not mistaken. Just checking it out here. No, it was Jorge Posada. My apologies to the Yankees fans, if any. That trio. It's just a really weird stat that it was like pointed out. It's like, okay, what, like, I get the whole trio thing. Why are we saying that they surpassed the Yankees? Well, whatever. Anyway, thought that was cool. I'm happy. This is Sidney Crosby's 19th season with the Pittsburgh Penguins. Do the math. That's literally 2/3 of my life. So
yeah,
that he's been on the Pittsburgh Penguins. So yeah, it's just,
that's crazy.
Yeah, just trio of the week. Lost to the Blackhawks, so Connor Bedard gets his first win. But the Penguins are an older squad, but they're still a very competitive one, and I'm very, very blessed to have watched them all this time.
Yeah. Welcome to the league. Your first face-off is against Sidney Crosby.
And you don't, I don't think, win a face-off with him the entire night. But you won the game. Won the
No,
game.
they interviewed him after the game and he was like, "Yeah, I didn't do really great at all
Sid,
in faceoffs, but
dude, Sid's good. Sid's really good. Let's be real. He said the right thing. So anyway, shout out to
yeah.
those guys. Go ahead.
Yeah, so that's a good I've got two like sort of statistical performances going to college. I've got ground game of the week and air game of the week. My ground game of the week goes to Kamani Vidal, running back for Troy,
Mm.
for his performance against Arkansas State. He had 28 carries for 245 yards and 3 tutties, including a 69-yard rush. Just absolute domination. They just destroyed Arkansas State. Tough tough scene on that one.
Man, I wanted to look this up because I saw something last night that literally last night. We're recording this on a Wednesday, and I might have to do a follow up next week to actually identify the player. But I did have something. I was like, man, I really wish I could find like an absolute dog or like great teammate type thing of the week. Last night, Coastal Carolina, the Chanticleers, actually defeated the Appalachian State Mountaineers in a very close game. They kicked a field goal to do it, and on the final drive, I want to say it was Braden Bennett. I think their leading rusher. Or it was Jared Brown. I have to look this up. But I'm watching the end of this game, and it's just kind of the night's winding down, right? And their lead running back on this play, Coastal Carolina has the opportunity to go into the end zone, right? And he actually decides to make the unselfish play of sliding down at the 1 yard line when he clear as day could have just gotten the game sealing touchdown. Well, he did that obviously because his football knowledge, he understood, oh, we need to, whether he might have been directed to as well, but either way, he made the unselfish move to go down to the 1 yard line to continue the clock going. And so it would have left Appalachian State like a good minute left on the clock if they'd scored that touchdown. And it was like a tied game. So instead, he decided to go down at the 1. I don't think they even took another play. They lined it up for the field goal and they kicked it and won it as time expired. Makes the unselfish move of having one less touchdown on the game so his team could just straight up win the game instead of take the risk that they might lose it. Thought that was great. And I apologize to listeners, but I would have to go check it out later on. But it's one I thought of just now as I saw that result. And so shout out that young man who made that decision.
Yeah. I mean, that's a great thing to see. I mean, even some professionals don't always think about the smart play, but great to see him at least knowing to do that and be willing to do that.
For sure.
The air game of the week performance goes to quarterback Jacob Zeno from UAB. I believe this is Trent Dilfer's squad. He was 19 of 24 passing for 353 yards, 4 touchdowns, and they had a total of 56 points against USF. Which USF I think is 3-3. But we saw them against Alabama, so they're not totally a easy win there. So
no.
Yeah, I thought that was a pretty good performance from him.
I have to agree. I will go ahead and give my upset of the week, my actual one. Couple of college ones, obviously, that I gave kind of honorable mentions earlier. But my actual one comes from the NFL this week because for me, this was the biggest upset of the week because I just couldn't believe it. My Pittsburgh Steelers beat the Baltimore Ravens, and the way they beat the Ravens, like just snatching victory from the jaws of defeat, if you even want to call it that. Obviously, I'm not going to get into the whole personnel thing. Pittsburgh Steelers fans are unhappy about a very specific individual. I've talked about him on this show before. I'm not going to go into that now. I just thought it was solid. Pickett hits Pickens for his late touchdown on the right side. Really good play. Steelers win. Steelers seem to have Lamar Jackson's number. That's just kind of what it looks like. I really hope that is the case long term, which is why I was kind of rooting for the long term deal to for sure happen if as a Pittsburgh Steeler fan, because hey, he can't beat the Steelers, and it's looking like that's going to be the case for a while. But
Yeah,
that was genuinely a surprising result. I mean, even though like my arrogance, I could sit here as a Steelers fan. I'm like, yeah, but this Steelers team hasn't looked anywhere near as good as this Baltimore's team to start the year. So anyway, Steelers win and sit atop of the AFC North right now. Upset of the week.
Who could have possibly foreseen that?
I mean, I want to say as a Steeler fan, I always no, I really did not foresee that, but also more because who foresaw the Bengals struggling so much?
Yeah, that too. Yeah,
it's more that is happening than the rest of us are playing well. Let's just be real.
Yeah,
I mean, if the Bengals figure it out down the stretch, I really think they could. It's getting to the point now where they may not win the division simply because they're adding the losses up and they're having struggles and all that. But I still think on paper they're far and away better than all the three of us. So I
probably, yeah.
Anyway,
yeah.
Ask me about that again in a week. Another week in the league, you never know. But
yeah,
that's the last of the week I have. So I'll let you kind of continue.
No, yeah, that was all I had as well. So
cool. Well, we have what we have here going into kind of our second hour. It like a little bit less, but that's actually good timing because that was like as much for football I wanted to say. Right before we get into this thing, I will say been thoroughly enjoying MLB playoffs. Been great. Things are kind of unfolding like we thought they would. I'm not going to make this super long winded. Every series for the divisional round is not over yet. Some are. I still feel really good about my prediction of like Braves Phillies, that being the series to watch in terms of your eventual winner.
I mean, I was a little surprised that the O's got swept and just sort of embarrassed, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah, tough to see, honestly. Hard to watch.
I mean, I think we all kind of, we discussed that maybe, the inexperience would get to them, but I thought, they would at least be competitive or win this series.
I think a couple of things. One, I think the Rangers were really good for the reasons that James kind of pointed out last week. But another thing, I think that we are going to start to see the wild card being longer, being an advantage for the wild card team going into. I mean, I think the Rangers are really good, and I think probably they still do win that series. But I think if Baltimore would have had to play a couple of games, they would have been hotter going into that series. And as a fan of the Guardians and the Pirates, we should like that, Casen, because my thoughts are, well, if I ever see the Pirates make the back to the postseason, which I will again someday, and you'll see the Guardians back in it as well. If you're the wild card team, is that almost preferable now with the way it is? Yeah. Hard to say. I mean, I'd rather the hot hand if we win the first two games, especially if we win 1 and 2 to get through. I'd be like, I don't care who we're playing next. I like our chances. So we're the hotter team. So anyway, that's all I really wanted to point out about baseball. Just something to look at going forward for the fans out there. But we're a little late to this. We're going to shift to pop culture. We got to talk about the end of Ahsoka, the end of season 1, and primarily my dude Casen. We needs to talk about Ahsoka.
Yeah, well, I mean, I had somebody be very disappointed that we didn't talk about it last week. So yeah, we'll get into it and break it down.
Yeah, apologies for that. When in trying to balance everything we have to talk about, but here you get it.
Oh yeah, it was gonna be way too long of an episode.
Right. And my thoughts are, and this one might be on the longer end as well, but we got to talk about this for this back end. We have a couple things to talk about. But by now, everyone has seen it. Everyone's seen the end of Ahsoka. Spoiler warning. I don't think we even really need to talk about this non-spoiler heavy. I had to write some things down. I guess I'm the one of the two of us who's been the most critical of this series through the whole way. Got to be honest, the finale was mid to me. I thought the end of the show both set up and resolved what it set out to do in ways that, like from the beginning, have been for the diehard fans and has been for very little to anyone else. I ultimately like what we saw with Ezra. I like Ezra as a character. Also, the fact that he had a shirt made out of like dog tags that were stormtrooper dog tags. Someone pointed out to me, I'm like, yeah, if there's ever a look to really like uh drive home what this character's about, they really nailed it with that. I really liked ultimately I really liked it was like how it felt about the whole show. I liked every character except the title card and kind of what happened, but ultimately the show, I'm gonna get this out of the way. The show season ends with all of our people who we followed this whole season trading places essentially with Thrawn and Ezra. That was the show. That was the season. I mean, I'll let you talk because I really think you should speak on this as someone who has liked it more than me.
Yeah, no, I mean, I definitely totally understand what you're saying and what you're getting at. For someone who definitely isn't as big of a Star Wars fan as others and wasn't, super knowledgeable about, I guess, the source material of like the Clone Wars and Rebels and stuff like that. So I totally get it, and I don't think the show did a really good job of introducing you to these things as if you weren't aware, because they definitely came in expecting you to know certain things, and if you didn't, then it was sort of you either didn't care or you just didn't understand and stopped caring.
Yeah.
So I do definitely knock it for that because it didn't do a great job um of getting the normies on board with it. I mean, because it was a show made by a rebel diehard for other rebel diehards, and it was just like that just is what it is. Especially because the way they ended it. I mean, because I don't think the people who didn't see it were even aware of some of the stuff that they ended the show with. So like if you remember, they again the probably the best character that we were introduced to, or most developed and interesting character, Balin. He like wasn't in the episode until like the end of it.
Right. Well, what's fascinating is, and I'll just get this out of the way, where they left Balin, and obviously, rest in peace, Ray Stevenson. He passed away, the actor. That thread that they left him at, where he's standing among those statues, that was like for me the most fascinating like storyline to see if we were to go into a season 2, like by a lot. Like I could see a show just about what he's up to now with where they left him. Now, obviously, I would like to see him integrated with other stuff going on in the bigger universe, but that's why it's so like it actually made me sad when I saw the episode.
Yeah.
I thought like, wow, like as a on and off fan of this saga, they just presented me with one of the coolest things. Like, and I've since looked up, like he sees obviously that beacon at like a volcano, like in the distance, and people have speculated, is he going to find kyber crystals? Is he going to find like the source of all Force users, stuff like that? He's not interested really in the whole Sith Jedi conflict. He's more like, what's the core, like what's the greater power? And he's talking about that the whole season. And when that happened, I literally felt a sense of melancholy. I was like, wow, that's really sad. Like I would love to see what he's about to go do or find, and I know we're not getting any of it. And I don't know, just that needs to be said because that really, really disappointed me. And it's just a very human moment, is all I'm saying, for me and for, I'm sure, various fans of Ray Stevenson.
No, yeah. I mean, it totally. I mean, it's sort of where they left it off. I mean, I think they're gonna have to just kind of recast and move on because I mean they left it like because I believe, I don't think it's been like announced, but the speculation is we're getting a season 2 of Ahsoka.
Yeah.
And I mean the way they left it, like they're gonna have to continue to explore that storyline. So I don't know
if they even do that. I mean, it has seemed that in this era of Hollywood, at least this era of how Disney has handled stuff like this, that you just don't recast, you just don't do it. When someone passes away or doesn't want to continue, like for various reasons. I mean, we talked about that with Indiana Jones. We talked about that with other projects and others that don't need to be named. I just don't see them doing it. I just can see them writing that character out of the story entirely. If they actually recast it and tried to keep it going, that would, like, I would welcome that for the sake of the story, but there's always that, is that the right thing to do question. Hard to say. Hard to say.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know. I mean, but not, I don't want to make this too big, but than what it is. But I agree with you. They definitely left it in a place where, okay, all of these characters have threads that are clearly meant to continue. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, I think I don't did you did you do research and figure out what those statues were?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah,
Yes. Yes.
okay.
I did. And you can say a little bit for the sake of listeners if you want to, but just I advise you don't go down the rabbit hole because I'd rather just talk about what we saw in the episode.
Yeah, yeah. No, so I mean essentially the gist of it is that like the Balin's looking for essentially the source of the force, sort of the where it came from. And that's where it came from. The force essentially emanates from the Mortis gods, as they're referred to, which is, I believe, a father, a son, and a daughter. And it's the son is the dark side, the daughter is the light side.
Yes.
And the father essentially is his job is to keep them in balance of each other.
Balance.
And
yep.
And there's a huge thing in Clone Wars and Rebels about it, and not to get too into the weeds, but I mean essentially
it's one of the biggest things though that Filoni had a hand in making canon in the Star Wars universe, which is actually really cool. That it seems like Disney's like, oh no, we're totally on board with that. Like, we're totally on board with like that being canonized within the lore, and guaranteed Filoni did not really realize that was going to be the case when he was writing those Clone Wars episodes all those years ago, right? You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, I mean, he worked hand in hand with George to develop this, because it definitely seems like George used the Clone Wars to sort of hammer out all the other all the other ideas that he never really got to,
like
well even just in general, like details he didn't get to finish. Like he explained the origins of the Force through an animated cartoon, because that was the vehicle he had at his disposal at the time.
Yeah, it's true.
And so here we are with it being canon in live action, and I think it's definitely good. We're going to go down on that a lot more, and I think that, not to get too into the weeds about it, but I think it will be important to remember is that in the Clone Wars, there was a moment where Ahsoka dies.
Yeah.
And the daughter basically resurrects her, like if you remember the Rise of Skywalker, basically like that. And so she is like full of the life force power of the daughter of the Mortis gods. And that, I think, might be as to why she ended up in the world between worlds when she died with that fight of Balin. But essentially, the thing to remember moving forward is that I would imagine Ahsoka will take the place of the daughter in this trio. And I don't know if Balin's going to be the father, or I don't really know for sure what this. I would imagine we're going to get a representation. My guess will be that his apprentice Shin would be the figurehead of the son.
Yes.
Because Balin gives me the vibes of like he kind of sees the best of both sides. And so he sort of gives me the vibes that he wants to balance it out.
There's also like that. There's also been the kind of like dichotomy among Force users in Star Wars storytelling that like both sides need each other to know each other. Like, it's like yin and yang. You know, it's like that whole idea of like, do you know good without bad? Do you know bad without virtue? You know, good and it's
like
balance.
I was talking about this last week, and I with somebody, and I think that where I landed with something that makes a ton of sense, because it's like poetry, it rhymes. Is that the original trilogy exists because the prequels existed. So, for instance, the Empire existed with, Palpatine and Vader running the galaxy for however long they did, because the Jedis got too bloated and powerful during the Clone Wars.
Right.
They balance each other out.
Went the other way.
Yeah. And so Order 66 and, Anakin turning to Vader was the balance moment where it all sort of leveled out, and to, I guess, swing the Jedi back to their place.
Right. I want to swing back to the episode just to talk about that being said, it was very cool to see Ahsoka, Sabine, and Ezra all doing Jedi stuff. That's really what I wanted, like all show long. We did get that, and we got that very interesting scene where the Great Mothers bring those troopers seemingly back to life or back from the undead or whatever it was, showing that even for mindless stormtroopers, if you made it so that they always were fodder and could never be taken down, yeah, that becomes a problem very quickly. That was that was kind of spooky, and I liked that. Like for this time of year, I was like, oh, that's kind of creepy. Like, nice.
Yeah, I mean, I will say I was a little disappointed because it felt a little wasteful for the whole season to be sort of about Morgan Elsbeth, not being about, but like there was this running through line of Morgan Elsbeth like being part of the witches, and then we see her like join them, and she gets the I don't remember what it's the sword thing.
I know what you're talking about.
Yeah,
it's like
and the disappointment of her just being like cast aside fairly easily in the battle with Ahsoka.
It's made even weirder when you kind of need her to vanquish, because they kind of set up their conflict in that episode of Mandalorian. So I do get that, but especially in a story where every other character made it out of the season. I really, especially after they made her like another Great Mother, I thought, oh, okay, we're gonna have 4 Great Mothers now.
It definitely felt like she was supposed to, like they were setting her up to be OP, and then she just got like cast aside
to the point where even the
funniest part was they were like, oh, Morgan died, and he was like, well, she served her purpose, we're gone.
Thrawn was like, all right, I'm back. I don't care. Like, it's time to keep it moving. What else?
But the big thing of note though is that we did see Sabine finally use the Force to behead somebody. Terrific on that. She was able to use the Force to bring her lightsaber.
She also I honestly thought the scene where like Ezra jumps with the Force and then she pushes him with the Force to get him on the Chimera. I thought that was really cool. That was a genuinely awesome scene, and it was sort of like a faith moment too. It was like, wait, are you sure like I'm gonna be able to make it? And to be fair, Ezra's like, look, if I don't make it, like I'm falling basically to my death. And it's like one of those. And Sabine, I liked Sabine's response, like, hey, the longer we wait, the harder it's gonna be. I was like, oh, okay. So she's like definitely gonna do this. And it's like, oh, okay, sort of like showing, I don't know, like friendship brought out the best in her or whatever. So I that was cool. I know it was awesome to see Ezra show up in the suit at the end, because that was like a running thing. Okay, wasn't that a running thing for him? He would always be the master of disguise and stuff.
I just thought it was really dumb for him to show up in a stormtrooper outfit while they're like about to shoot him. And it's like, it's like you did not fly there the whole way in the outfit. Like, what are you doing, dude? Like, just take the helmet off. Like, what are you doing?
There's like the way you'd write that in Hollywood, and there's the way that actually realistically would have been, right?
He'd be dead before he makes it on the ramp.
So he gets out of there like, hey guys, like, yo, what's up? And then Hera would have been like, oh, it's Ezra. Like, what's up, man? How are you here? Kind of thing. Not like, oh, it's like, oh, this stormtrooper, it's gonna be Ezra, isn't it? And they're gonna do this whole he takes off the helmet thing. Like, of course the cliche thing happens. You know what I mean? Makes it better for the story. I get it, but ridiculous. I agree with you, Casen.
Anyway, so the season ends.
What did you think about it? I mean, we don't really have a rating, but
I mean, we can rate it. I think definitely it ends in a place where they're clearly setting some other stuff up. They're going to Dathomir. That's going to be super great. I hope we get a ton on Dathomir in the next project, whatever it is. I think is a season 2 leading up to their big like Avengers type of movie, with all the Mando characters and stuff like that. I think there's a lot of interesting stuff. I think the common thread that we're getting is the formula kind of seems to be a couple really good ideas with a handful of like really cool scenes and moments with some really questionably executed exposition filling the rest of the show.
I will go
if
ahead.
that makes sense.
I think our conversation on this show has been, I've been told by some other folks, has been some of their favorite who have watched it, mainly because you and I really have been at odds on this show. First time really since we've had this, our little, cast here. And I ultimately, like, I guess out of 10, what would you give it?
I will rate it for myself, and for myself, I really enjoyed it. I'd give it an 8 out of 10. I thought it was, I understood most of it, and I think that more than the average viewer.
I think when we talk about Dial of Destiny, we did do an out of 10. If we ever do a Marvel, for Marvel stuff, we might have to bring back our amazing vibranium to stuff. Yeah, we'll have to out of the 4. That was something you came up with that was just amazing. I will say for me, this was a 5 out of 10. This was, I could, like, my fandom and life have in no way or shape been like tremendously affected at this show's existence. That's probably a really harsh thing to say, but when I say that, what I mean is nothing majorly stood out to me. Nothing was like you said, this was not a show made for someone like myself. And that was very clear by the end. Like, the best way I can describe it is, I'm not excited for virtually anything they set up with the second season. I'm not. And I will watch it when the time comes so that we can talk about it. But I don't know. There was nothing in there for me to really latch on to by the time we were rolling credits. I was like, okay, I could have taken or left this whole thing. But sad for me to say, there was some cool stuff there was some things to like about it. But in a world where 5 is average, it was average to me. No lower than that. I mean, I could even push it. If I really nitpicked, I get it down to the 5. If I let it go and I'm easy about it, like 5 to 6, I can almost get it, but 5 out of 10 for me. So that's that. It was mid.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely, I don't blame that or blame you for that. I can definitely, I can see where you're going with it, and I think that, like I've said before, and that I think a lot of the, I guess, disappointment with the show was the poor explanation over what the show was going to be. I mean, they named it Ahsoka. She was barely in it, comparatively to other characters, and it's not really about her. I mean,
they really should call
kind of, but not. I mean, yeah,
they really should have called it like Rebels something. You know what I mean? Like Rebels.
Yeah, they should have. They should just. Yeah.
They
could have just called it. Yeah, I mean, if it would have been anything else, or if it could have been like Star Wars Rebels, like something like that,
or even like Star Wars Rebels Legacy or something. I mean, I don't know.
Something, yeah, exactly. Like something, because it's really about everybody, and so it's like not just about her.
No.
And so I think that was definitely, I think, the confusion, because I mean, nobody really knew that, like, you had to watch the entire series of Clone Wars and Rebels to understand what was going on.
Oh, not to mention literally all of the other movies and content in the entire saga.
Along with like some of the actual like non-canon stuff to understand what they were pulling from.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was definitely a deep cut. But I do think that as far as characterization goes, very interesting, because we got we got an explanation as to what happened between Ahsoka and Sabine.
Yeah,
that was interesting. So yeah, it's something to keep an eye on.
Something to keep an eye on. All in all, I think my take and your take, that's okay. It's like I said that other week. I said, and that's okay. We don't have to agree. I don't have to agree with the Star Wars fans who really liked it. I am genuinely glad you really enjoyed it, and I hope wherever they take the story going forward, I continue to enjoy. You want to talk about Loki? Then we can wrap this guy up.
Let's get into it.
So, on that same note, we saw the first episode of Loki. Spoiler warning for that. I'm going to go ahead and say spoiler warning because it is impossible to talk about the first episode of season 2 of Loki without seeing literally the entire first season. It is just one of those shows. It literally continues right from where that show ended. brilliantly, I'll point out, as I thought it would. I loved the first episode of season 2 of Loki. It was probably the best Marvel content I have seen since probably Guardians 3, which at least that was this year. But
Yeah.
I don't know about you, but I was on the edge of my seat almost the entire runtime. Just him dealing with the situation, and he's time skipping, and
did you go back and rewatch season 1?
I did not rewatch season 1. I did rewatch a little bit of some recap stuff with that, but I thought that the prequel, recap that they did was good enough. And I will also point out, at the time, Loki season 1, I rewatched the last episode of season 1 like twice. So just because I thought, like, I wanted to look for some more Easter eggs in that, and that was the first time we saw Jonathan Majors as like any kind of Kang character, right? I thought that was the best show we'd gotten for Marvel so far, so I loved it. So the ending of Loki season 1 though was horrifying, and I agree with the people who said that season 1 gave me that sense of dread again, and more ominous of what Kang could be, more than the entirety of Quantumania, which I'm not one of those people. I liked Quantumania. We talked about it.
Well, what's crazy is that here we sit after the premiere of season 2 of Loki, 2.5 years after the finale of season 1, and we still don't know what he was talking about, or what He Who Remains was talking about, as like we've crossed the void. Like, we still, like, I think we have thoughts, and we're still where we were, where we have ideas, but I don't think we have yet actually figured out what that was.
Right. Even though we've seen like one of the Kang variants, one of the things I've said about Kang the Conqueror is the idea of an infinite amount of people that evil is more terrifying than one of them. You understand what I mean? Like the idea of a multiversal war of that many people who are that as nuts as we saw one Kang again in Ant-Man in Quantumania is more terrifying. And I think that is what spooks Loki out more than anything, which it should. Like, yeah, just that idea of like, hey, this is who is in charge of, like, when he prunes the wall and he's like,
yeah,
this is who is in charge of this, by the way. That was so terrifying. And it was just like, Loki has no idea what the idea of this even is, which is why it's going to be fascinating for when we do eventually see the variant in this show. What's he going to be like? You know, like calculating, a genius, a nerd. Like, I mean, just that intrigues me. We know how smart he is, you know what I mean? But it's like, what are they going to be like? I feel like I'm getting down the rabbit hole of theories, so I don't want to do that too much longer.
No, yeah. I mean, it as I was sort of getting at it, it took me a minute to sort of get into the craziness that is the TVA and all the ridiculous logic of the time skipping and all this stuff. But it was, oh my God, one of my favorite Marvel scenes in a very long time was when they get down to the basement. And
thank you.
None other than Short Round.
Kihei Kwan, man. Dude, I actually said to someone, that is one of the most brilliantly written scenes in a TV show or movie I've ever seen. From the like,
I mean,
this is why you pay your writers. Shout out to the strike being over.
Yeah.
The fact that like they get there, first of all, the dialogue's hilarious. I mean, between the three actors, they're just flying off each other, and it's just so funny. It's like the time skipping.
Seeing them have conversations about the same thing, in different times, is just it's incredible. It's incredible.
Wait. So it's like, he's like, oh wow, time skipping. You know what this is? You've seen it before? He's like, yeah, I've seen it before. Can you fix it? No one can fix that.
No.
It's impossible to time. And it's just like, and then that happens. But then I thought to myself, oh, he's gonna still be in the basement. And then he went to the basement and he's in the past and he's like, OB. He's like, OB, I've never met you before. And then I'm like, oh, awesome. They're gonna write this so that like Loki's telling him what's happening to him in the future, and Obi's gonna remember it in the present. Like, I thought that was brilliant because he's like, oh, you're the, what's he say that guy's name was? Loki. Oh, he was the one who told me about this. And it's like, wait, he must be talking to me like right now in the past, you know? The other thing, so that scene was brilliantly written. That was so good. Like, I racked that scene back to watch the whole thing over again because this just, just so excellent. Like when the writers, actors, and everyone's on the same page. Not to mention there are no reshoots with this show. It's another huge thing we haven't really talked about. It's gonna make for some really great moments. But OB seems like a really cool character. Just in general. I mean, people have
I'm
said,
hoping
like,
he's in. I'm hoping he's in a lot of
Yeah.
the season, because he's a really funny character, and he definitely the dynamic between the three of them is really really interesting.
Yeah, like I can totally see this being like a, why is this happening to Loki? And obviously we kind of get an idea of what might be happening. It has to do with Sylvie somehow, but he's skipping through time, and as far as he knows, he just left the He Who Remains room. You know what I mean? Like he's still got his clothes on. Like it's been like maybe a day, and so
no, I it's probably been an hour.
Might have been like an hour or two. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I think that's what's so fascinating. So it's like this stuff's still blowing his mind. Loki's still scared about what he just learned. He now sees a different TVA, and now he's seeing it through time. When they jumped him I'm getting ahead of myself, but when they jumped him forward at the end of the episode, that I found fascinating, because he looks over and he sees that it says skin written on the, the thing Mobius put on the thing. And he's like, I was like, oh, it's the future. And I was waiting for some sort of mind-blowing thing, but it just looks like the TVA is about to like explode. Like everyone's just running around, freaking out. Like it just like a disaster is about to strike. That was fascinating. And then of course we have the phone ringing, the elevator opens, and then Loki's pulled out of the time loop, and he he and Mobius live by the end of the episode. Again,
do you want my theory on that?
Yeah, go ahead.
So we see the conversation between him and Sylvie. Sylvie's gonna end up back there. Apparently, I mean, clearly, like we saw at the end of the episode, they're going to hunt her down. I would imagine they find her. And then so she's in there. She goes, "Hey, where have you? I was just looking for you." And then he gets pruned. I think he gets pruned by himself in the future. There's a lot of talk over like who pruned him, if it was Mobius or if it was somebody else. I think it'll be him, because future him will be, doing something with Sylvie, see past him, realize I have to be the one to prune him. And then
that makes sense.
I'm curious who's on the other side of that phone.
The phone. I think I can see this whole thing being one giant paradox, because they showed us. Shout out to an underrated show, Miss Marvel.
Where maybe they're gonna have him like we're gonna see it. I hope we see it from his and Sylvie's perspective in the future, where we see him like dip off to make a phone call to make sure past him hears it to bring him that direction.
Exactly.
And then he comes back, and then
I also wouldn't be surprised if that's in the last episode of the season. Like we've come full circle all the way back to, this is what happened,
Yeah.
We see that whole scene play out from his perspective, only it's the perspective of him that is caught up with the situation, that prunes himself. You know what I mean? So I don't know. I think there's so much you can do with time travel storytelling that is so cool. And it just, the MCU has really tried to push it in different directions, and they really have since Endgame. You know what I mean? But I will say, that scene where Mobius is going out to like the timeline where it all gets woven together, that looked like movie budget to me. Like that looked fantastic for a Disney Plus.
Oh yeah. It was really really great visual effects for that.
I've always liked the almost steampunkish, like time punkish 70s look of the TVA from the first season. It's one of the coolest places.
Yeah, it's hilarious that literally it's the time loom, where it's weaving all these timelines together, and the way to essentially get him is essentially just throw out a fishing rod to reel him in. Like it's essentially what it is.
Yeah, he's like, I don't know, man. I don't know. It's a space between time. I don't know what to tell you. What is fascinating though is that stuff that got pruned in the first season went to that place where He Who Remains is at, right? And so it'll be fascinating to see, like, as stuff gets pruned this time from the timeline, where does it go? And we saw him go. He got pruned from the back and then got shot out of the timeline, right?
When he got pruned by the elevator.
Yes.
Yeah. So he got pruned,
and then he got shot.
He got shot out, and then they captured him, and then it brought him back into where he belonged.
Right, and he knocked Mobius in, and they lived.
Yeah,
which was good.
Yeah. But that's a really good question, because it's like, where would he have ended up? Right. Who knows?
Right. He needed to find the spot right there where he needed to get back to somehow do that. Anyway, also amazing. they recreate a 1982 McDonald's that Sylvie
Yeah.
rolls up to at the end, and I'm like, well, this is some free promotion for McDonald's. I wouldn't be surprised if the writers reached out to some like restaurants and were like, hey, what would it make sense to have this part of the plot be in? McDonald's is like the easy option because it's like the most American fast food restaurant internationally known. But I had even someone else tell me they loved that scene so much because it's like, hey, you can try our brand new chicken McNuggets in 1982.
Yeah.
It's like, and like obviously the uniforms and everything like that. I'm like, man, McDonald's had to supply all this, and they had to make a 1982 McDonald's. I love history, and so anytime you get to play around with that kind of storytelling, it's just so fun.
Yeah, I've seen other people sort of comment on the fact that it's really interesting because Sylvia as a character, spent basically her entire life growing up in the middle of disasters.
Yeah.
And here she is after finally accomplishing her goal of killing He Who Remains to end it, and to end her being on the run, or seemingly.
Yeah.
To and her first thing is to go to McDonald's.
Well, what's funny
she falls in love with it.
Yeah, she falls in love with it. And honestly, that was actually a really sweet scene. Her just kind of looking around, like you forget how hardened a character she is. I mean, she's got one of the darkest backgrounds, and she's like an anti-hero essentially because of it. She's mostly a villain, an antagonist in the first season, and she's looking around at just like a regular place where it's like I'm like thinking she's literally says I'm hungry. And she's looking around at how peaceful everything looks. And she's like, I want to try everything. And it's like, oh yeah, I guess someone like her not seeing just a regular McDonald's in, circa 1982 America would think this is like the greatest thing ever,
Yeah.
So I just thought that it's going to be fascinating to see when Loki shows up. It's like, oh, where's she at? All right, well, she is at a McDonald's in the middle of, I don't know, wherever it was, Missouri. In 1980,
it was Oklahoma.
It was Oklahoma. Yeah. I think it was Oklahoma. Yeah. Yeah. Just just everything in this show visually just looks amazing, from the TVA to the McDonald's at the end, which is not a thing I thought I'd say about a Marvel project ever. Just looks fantastic. And it was probably the best first episode of one of these Marvel shows yet so far. It was so good.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, it's the first second season we've gotten of any Marvel project.
You are correct.
And so I think that definitely Loki, I think based off of the attention it got for the first season, probably got a much bigger budget, much more attention. And it looks, and they definitely started off on the right foot. I mean, the entire scene in that like conference room where like really interesting conversation where they're like debating over the ethical dilemma of pruning whole timelines and essentially debating over if it's mass genocide.
They're literally talking about how do we even proceed forward? Like what do we do? It's like,
but contrasting that to like skipping back to Loki hearing their tape recording between Kang and Renslayer, which like I essentially sounded like a couple conversation, and which comically they have a romantic relationship.
They're romance in the comics, yes. So it would actually make sense. Yeah.
I don't even remember. So I since I didn't go back and watch it, I kind of forgot where we left off with Renslayer at the end of last season. Like I think the last we saw her was in the basement with
she opened up a portal and dipped while Mobius watched.
Oh, that's right. So yeah, she's gone. So like does she everyone else it seems had their memory wiped. Did she not? Did she remember Kang?
I think she's an ally of Kang. I don't know. Yeah. I don't know how deep. I don't know all of what she knows of what Kang the Conqueror knows in terms of how big this is, in terms of his variants and all that. But I think that this particular version of Renslayer will come back this season, the one that knows this whole situation. And I think that she's absolutely like an ally of his of some kind. The extent of which we don't know. But
now here's a question.
yes,
Was He Who Remains the Kang that set up the TVA?
that I don't know. I think we're led to believe that, but we don't know for sure, right?
Yeah, I mean, we don't know. So here's so do we get another version of Kang next episode, or are we gonna have to go a little bit more down?
Well, we know that
Because all we know is we're getting Timely.
we know we're getting Victor Timely in this season. I am not ruling out I'm not ruling out us getting more than one Kang variant in this season. I think it's been rumored
I'm sure.
that
I'm sure we'll get more than one.
I think it's been. I don't think we'll get that towards the end of the end of the season, but I think Timely's going to be the main. Maybe not even an antagonist. Maybe like just a version of him that has discovered time travel in the 1920s or something. And from where they go with that, we'll see. But I can also see a situation where they set him up to be that, and then he's actually like the mastermind at the end of like maybe he set up maybe Timely set up the TVA. Some other version of him became He Who Remains, and we don't find that out till the end of the season. That's a theory
maybe. Yeah, so, that's possible.
Because that would be a cool twist where it's like we think this is the not so smart Kang, and it's like, oh, he's actually more smart than the other one. You know what I
mean? And he just like hid in the past as Victor Timely, and
he's like, where can I go in the timeline to where I'm a genius, look like a genius, know everything, and can just be left alone by all my other variants? 1920s America or whatever it is, 1800s, whatever. So, yeah, keep your eyes on that, man. But the fact that we just spent all that time on that first episode, game over, man. It is going to be so good. It's going to be such a good season.
When the show started and that music hit, it was like, oh, yeah, it was all rushing back.
All rushing back. That same sense that I got after the first season wrapped up, which I think should bring us to our closing topic here. That happened literally today being Wednesday. It'll be Thursday by the time you see this, but Casen pointed out to me this morning that a lot of news was dropping about Marvel in-house today, primarily being the 11th of October. And they're rehauling a lot of things. I don't want to say, I want to go ahead and kind of just give a rundown, but it sounds like there's going to be they're Marvel is not going to do individualized series, like limited series anymore, essentially. They're going to focus all of their time and effort on shows that are essentially designed to get multiple seasons, at least a second season. And they're going to do that storytelling as they're going to set out when they write these shows to do that. You can go to the details, Case, and it's like there's going to be a showrunner who keeps a show Bible and
well, essentially
writer.
Essentially the gist of the situation is that it was sort of revealed that they hadn't been doing that they haven't really been having a showrunner that has been managing the entire storyline, and they've just been sort of filming stuff, and if anything didn't work, they just sort of changed it in post or reshot what needed to be reshot. And that led to some things such as Secret Invasion and you can imagine what else, sort of probably, certain female green thing, getting a little too off the rails and shows not really being quite what they should have been or were intended to be. It sounds like Feige probably trusted people a little bit more than he should have to get the job done. And definitely, I think the reaction to Secret Invasion was the final straw.
But I also think that the strike is now over. I think that there's now new contractual obligations to writers to be able to pay them a certain amount. And I think the way you start to do that is to let's pull together an actually hired team, always have the writer's room, and you people will work on this show from start to finish, period. It keeps things more organized, keeps labor not being wasted. Also with SAG-AFTRA, like that strike's not over yet, but I do think we are towards it coming to an end, closer than we are. Writer strike is obviously over, but I think that all of these different things, from Disney being in a place like, okay, look, we've tried a few things now, this works, to the writer strike now being over, I ultimately think this is all positive, and it's going to lead to better content overall. I will also say that I think it's I think that officially puts the nail in the coffin for any of the limited series ever coming back that we have had so far. I don't even think necessarily anything that hasn't had a greenlit second season, I don't think is getting one on the Marvel end. WandaVision, no way. We knew that wasn't going to be the case. Sam and Bucky, hard to say. Really hard to say with that one. Hawkeye, no way. Secret Invasion, no way. It's just going to be things that were in which they were going to spend their time in multiple seasons.
Yeah, and I mean, I think definitely. I mean, there's supposed to be Echo coming out,
right? Which is a different show. Show, right? And they've already decided that's going to be much smaller release window than it was.
Yeah,
it's going to be like basically over Thanksgiving, I think.
Yeah,
they're just going to drop it.
I think they're definitely trying to bury it. That's how
I would actually agree. I actually think that. I think more of this stuff. I think is Marvel kind of realizing that a lot of the stuff that they have in the chamber is not as good, and they're realizing that something like Loki that's been really good is going to be a smash, and it's a good lesson to be had. And probably the biggest thing that you pointed out to me is that the entire creative team behind Daredevil Born Again has been fired and is not coming back, and they're essentially going to from the ground up redo the whole thing. From the sound.
Yeah, so they had already done, like, prior to the strike, they'd already done less than half, but like, almost half of the season. So I think it was somewhere around eight episodes or something is what they had done. And it sounds like Feige thought it was terrible. It was not a good idea.
Wow.
I mean, from what the rumors are, is that like all of his friends were going to die in the first episode, and he was going to quit being Daredevil until episode 5 or something.
Yeah, it
was going to be just kind of a really weird off the rails. Apparently, like half of the episodes were going to be specifically courtroom dramas, basically.
Yeah, they were
like Law and Order.
and in a show where you apparently were going to have 18 episodes, I cannot believe that they were going to spend any time at all, that much time, him away from being Daredevil. And I also didn't realize how they were going to be able to load up that many episodes with content.
Yeah, and I think that I also think that maybe I don't know if that was confirmed, but I think maybe they're switching, because it was supposed to be one 18 episode season. I think they're switching that to planning on multiple seasons.
That would make sense. Maybe. Again, it would be like, okay, let's go into this with at least 2 seasons worth in mind.
Right. And I think from now on they need to plan on, like, how can we get at least 2 seasons of a show? Like, right. Yeah.
So that being said, I welcome all of these changes. It was just a lot of news to sift through today. It felt like significant stuff was coming out like every 30 minutes, at least this morning, of significant things in terms of changes being made, at Marvel, all of which I think this is all of them realizing, look, strike's over, new era. Let's try to find a formulaic solution to putting out much better content, and I think we're going to get it, personally.
Yeah. I mean, and I think maybe sort of a reason why Loki has been so good is because there's the common thread of Michael Waldron sort of being the de facto showrunner of the entire show.
Yeah.
That, like, it sounds like he took a step back and he's not doing quite as much for season 2 because he's been busy with other stuff, but he's still an EP and he's still been heavily involved in, I think, the direction. But yeah, I mean,
the proof is the proof is in the content, and it just
yeah.
I mean, look how good it's been, and I just think that's why I just wanted to end today's show with us addressing that as well, because we've talked about what works, what doesn't in terms of show running, and I just think in this era now where, again, shout out the writers, shout out the new deal being signed, and all those who made it happen and negotiated. This is welcome news for the writers who are going to be working on this going forward. And straight up, I think I told you, Casen, Daredevil is one of my favorite Marvel heroes, one of my favorite superheroes. And in terms of like the comics I've read in my life, one of my absolute favorite comic runs. Like his current stuff's amazing, but there's so much you can do with the severity of stuff of like his run in the 80s some of the best content Marvel's ever put out. And it really sounds like they're going to get back to the roots of Daredevil as a character. And I love Charlie Cox as Matt Murdock. Always have. I think Vincent D'Onofrio is an amazing Kingpin. Always have. And I want that to be done well. And it sounds like everyone's on the same page of, yeah, let's go back to the drawing board with this. So, yeah.
Yeah, I am fully on board with anything that brings us, much better content in a more sustainable way. So
for sure. So that was as full an episode as we've had in a while, dude. But we needed to do it.
Yeah.
We've got things in the chamber, and we'll go. I'll just go ahead and say to the people who reached out to me and you, Casen, we'll get to what we can every week. I actually had quite a few people reach out last week than normal about our baseball preview, just because a lot of people were like, oh, hey, it was really cool to, I had, it's always friends. I think one of the things you and I would agree on is that we never try to pretend this show is anything more than what it is, at least for right now, it really, but like for a week where I had a lot of people in my circle and friends and family reach out and say, hey, I really like, the show you did. And it was not great to hear you guys talk about some baseball in a professional way. I can't thank you all enough for feedback like that. So we're doing something right, bro.
Yeah. I think thanks to everybody that reaches out and tells us their thoughts. We definitely appreciate it, and it makes us feel good about what we're doing and putting out for you guys.
Yep. And that being said, we always hope that there's something in it for everyone. I've also had people who were like, sometimes I'll listen to one half and not the other. I'm like, that's fine. We know.
Yeah.
We're here to talk about all of it. So we thank you as always. This is Kellan.
This is Casen.
And we'll see you again at the next stop.